Hello, everyone. So once again, thank you for joining this series. Those who are joining or rejoining, let me say, this series, welcome back. And the new people in the stream today, thank you very much for taking time. I will hope that we will make the show a learning one for you, right? So I try and stay away from entertainment ones because the premise of my show, Manage Better, as you some of you may know, is the fact that we all can get better with time, right? So none of us are born with all the skills that we need in life. We keep acquiring skills, we keep getting better, and that's the motto of our working and personal lives as well. Today should be better than yesterday, and today tomorrow will be better than today. So with that, and of course, a quick check. Those who have joined us on LinkedIn or YouTube, with a quick shout out that you can see us live. I can see Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. All three are live, but sometimes things don't work out. So do let me know where you are joining from, and in some time we will open for questions as well. So today's show is in a way a special show. I've been trying to have this show on this theme for a while, and finally, and as many of you know, I try and get the best speakers that I can, so that it is a worthwhile show for your time. So today I have with me a pioneer of sorts, right? In many ways, because the person I will bring to you has created this whole concept around storytelling. All of us realize that much of the learning at work and sometimes in life as well is through stories. Many of us forget the facts and figures, but remember the incidents. You will certainly remember incidents if you are my age. You will still remember incidents of growing up and stories from your school time fondly. Remember the days when you get together with friends from school time. You will find that the stories of school, college, growing up, all of those come together, and in many ways those stories shape who we are. We are a sum total of those stories in many ways, right? Of course, we will dig deeper into this subject. So like most of my shows, I am no expert in this. I am a student, so I decided to get a master. So who's the master today? I'll bring him in, but very quickly, Indranil Chakraborty, or very popularly known as IC. After working for over 21 years in corporates like Unilever, Tata's, and Mahindras, he started probably India's first focused storytelling uh, organization or a consulting firm called StoryWorks. So if you haven't checked him out, check him up on LinkedIn, and also StoryWorks. So StoryWorks was found in 2013, and as I said, a pioneer in business storytelling in India, and has been instrumental in increasing the popularity of this skill. So in the last few years, if you've realized that storytelling in India has become popular, a big lion's share of that popularity or credit goes to IC. His firm, which is StoryWorks, has helped over 50 organizations and over 3,000 senior leaders harness the power of stories to create and deliver impactful messages. The the same approach, of course, can be found in his book, which is a bestseller book, Stories at Work. But more about all this when we get deeper into the session. So, welcome, IC. Thank you, first of all, for taking time for this session. As you can see, many people in the audience are already very excited about you joining. So, any opening comments, IC, before we get deeper into the session?
First of all, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, nothing like Saturday morning to be telling stories, right? So yeah, let's start our conversation.
Sure. So I see as we get into it, of
Mhm.
course, we are already getting a lot of. You seem to have quite a fan base. I will hope that some of that fan base transfers to me during this show. But um, so a good shout out to all those people who are letting us know that you are in the show and eager to learn. So the like I said in the preamble and the opening of the show, the whole reason, of course, I see that I wanted you on the show and have been trying to get you on the show is is because, like me, many people are interested in storytelling, but we probably are, the amateurs amongst the amateurs, right?
Mm.
And like every other skill, this is a skill that can be learned. Many of
Absolutely.
us, of course, believe that storytellers are naturally born like many other professions, but we all know that that's not true. So my question that I wanted to pose you, and you may have guessed this question, and many in the audience may have guessed this question, but my question is, what is the story of you getting into the storytelling business, right? So what is IC story, and that hopefully will inspire many others in the audience. Over to you.
I think the sharper question is, what is a computer science engineer who was selling soaps and then airtime and then teddy bears and holidays is doing in storytelling? Because engineers are supposed to elaborate, right? So how come stories? Now, uh, if there are people in the audience who've heard me before, then you've heard the story. So pardon me for this. So around 2011, I was the chief marketing officer at Club Mahindra, yeah, Mahindra Holidays, and we had just come up with a new credo, like a vision. Why do we come to work every day? And our new credo was to make every moment magical. That sounded good because we were in the hospitality business. We then said, okay, if everyone, the 5,000 people in the company, need to deliver these magical moments, we need them to give them some guidelines of behavior. What if they behave like? Would they deliver magical moments? And just to take an example, one of those guidelines was no room for ordinary. Why? Because ordinary can't be magical. And experience is everything. Why? Because most of the industry, including us, we are trying to sell something called a 5-star holiday. I don't know really what that means to people. Whereas if I could tell you that you will spend your holiday in a tree house, yeah, overlooking the jungle, that is an experience you can understand and look forward to. So so on and so forth. Now, while in head office it all made sense, in the posters it made sense, the question that I had in my head is, how do you ensure that the housekeeping boy, let's say in Manali, understands this? And no matter what I did, which is the traditional things like workshops and PDFs and screensavers and t-shirts, and none of them, obviously, like in every other company, did work. And it's in that quest during that year I stumbled on a blog of a guy called Sean Callahan, who had written beautifully in his blog that the best way to convert something abstract into something concrete is to tell a story. My first reaction, like you said, for many people, I said, but I'm in business, how can I tell stories? Luckily for me, Sean was traveling into India, and we had a 2 days of conversations. And really what he told me then, and I'm going to paraphrase him here, he said, don't try and explain one English word or phrase with multiple more English words or phrases. It doesn't work. Go and find stories from your organization which are an absolute clear, concrete understanding of what you're talking about. And when you try to find those stories, you'll find a lot of stories that are incorrect because people didn't understand. But you'll find stories that are absolutely right. And then do three things: teach your leaders to be storytellers, give them these stories to tell, and then change every process in your company, whether it's the induction program, the town halls, with storytelling. And so, armed with that knowledge, I obviously didn't set up a separate project because I was still skeptical. As I traveled through the country, the resorts and the branch offices, in the evening, I would get people together and ask them to share with me examples of each of our behavior guidelines. So, give me an example of no room for ordinary. Give me an example of experiences, everything. And yes, like Sean had said, I got some lousy stories some other day for those. But in all those junk, I got stories like this one, which many of you in this audience may have heard about. This story is from the Kurk Resort in Karnataka, where one of the receptionists tells me this story about another receptionist. And he says that the other one gets a call from a member and then is relaying the call to the dining hall when this guy overhears. So this guy is telling the dining hall, a member is coming with two children and his wife. They're stuck in traffic. They can't make it for the lunch service. Can we pack some lunch boxes and keep? So the other guy said, hey, did you ask the member which route he's coming from? He says, yeah, that route. He called the dining hall again and tell them to pack some tea and cakes as well. I said, but wow, why? He said, don't you know there's a flower show that will be inaugurated by the local politician? The police have blocked that road. There is no hope in hell they're going to be here before 6:30. The other guy says, "Oh my God, there are children in the car." Half an hour later, this guy, without telling anybody, without taking any permission, goes to the lunchroom, picks up those lunch boxes, ties it up on his motorcycle, then travels through some interior roads for 6, 7 kilometers, keeps calling the member's mobile, locates the car, and then goes and says, "Your children must be hungry." And that is living the value, no room for ordinary. And as soon as we started sharing stories like this, I saw magic happen. Anshuman, I won't tell you that there were thousands, but every month I got 4, 5, 10 stories for each of our behavior guidelines, which showed me they're getting it. And that's when I was thinking about what to do next. Yeah, and there seems to be an echo. Are you getting an echo as well?
No.
No, okay. So that's when I decided that, this is interesting. It'll be lovely to bring this into the mainstream of business in India, because after all, there's only one way to get humanity back to organizations, and that I think is through stories. So that's how I got into storytelling.
Absolutely fascinating start to the show, and I- you said some may have heard the story, yes, but there are quite a few fans of your Club Mahindra days as well. Kaushik is already mentioning that he's a fan there, and quite a few others, right? So
Hmm.
I will get into the questions later, I see, but just quickly bringing up some comments that are already coming in. Rajeshwar Rao has been with Infosys and now is a consultant. He's often told concept, which is probably the precursor to my next question, is that we are all brought up with phrases like "kahani mat bol," and to those who are international audience in this call, there are some. This basically translates to saying that "don't give me stories" is how we are brought up, right? And today it is exactly the opposite. Thanks to people like IC, what's your unique story is the answer. Even in interviews, I have found myself asking a candidate, "So what is unique about you? Tell me a story that will tell me more about you than your resume." Um, and of course, I will get to Raj's question later. But his comment also prompted me to ask, not only have we been brought up with saying that don't give me stories, we've also been brought up corporate life that give me data, give me facts and figures, don't give me English. I use that phrase quite a lot actually, even now, right? So this is all English, right? So where's the maths in this? And I have found myself correcting myself often, but it's a very deeply ingrained thing, and we have been all brought up like this. What is so counterintuitive about storytelling that is breaking this myth and needs to break this, right? So in simple word, my question is that if we've all been brought up with facts, figures, data, what makes storytelling work?
So first of all, I don't have a quarrel with facts, figures, and data, because after all, that's the currency of business, right? You don't want to, in the afternoon of a Friday, sitting in a meeting, want to listen to Mahabharat, right? You want to listen to facts, figures, because that's what you're there for. You don't want to make up facts. So first of all, in all the work that I do, my definition for stories is that stories are facts. What I help people to do is wrap the fact in context and deliver the fact with emotion, right? Now, let me do one thing. As you were asking me the question, I pulled out a few sort of slides that I want to use to drive home this point, right? And through you, I'm going to ask the question to everybody. So let me just pull out my slide. Just give me a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to pretend that you guys are, all of you are the senior management of a giant cement manufacturing company. Yeah. And I am the safety officer. And I have come in for my yearly review. We have it every quarter and then obviously once in a year. So as I walk in, I put up this slide, and and then I take you through. Anshuman, just confirm that you're seeing the slide.
I will bring it on, so I can see it. I'm sure others can too.
Okay. So imagine this is 2018 and I have come in and you guys are the senior management. I'm the safety officer. And I come and say, gentlemen, we've had a very bad year. Yeah. uh, we lost 8 people. That is 33% more people than the year before. And non-fatalities major, this is where people have lost their arm or their leg, has gone down by 14%. But the minor non-fatalities and the near misses have been shooting through the sky. And we can't let this continue. We are now not only the worst in our industry, we are worst across industries. And we've tried everything before. Every quarter together we have made plans, but none of them seems to have worked. So I've looked across the world and I found this boutique agency in Paris. Just two people who've worked with some of the most complex industries in the world, and they are pretty certain that if they can work with us for a year, they can bring us to world standards. My request to you in the managing committee is to approve a project that will last a year and cost $500,000. Now, I don't want you guys to answer this question on the chat or anything, but I want you to make up your mind as to, as a senior leader, what will your response be to me? And for, like Anshuman said, many of you, and correct me if I'm wrong, will say, hey, we can't lose, people, but I can't take a $500,000 decision with one slide. Yeah, I need to know, where does it happen? When does it happen? Is there some things that we've understood better? What are the things that we have tried and it has not worked? Once I have the decision, data, I will give you the decision. Yeah? Probably most of you would be there, right? Now, suppose I could rewind and erase. Imagine that conversation never happened, and you guys are still the senior management. I'm still the safety officer, but this time I walk in and I say, ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago I met Ramesh Menon's family. We lost Ramesh in the boiler accident in Jabalpur, and while we have given Ramesh's family an ex gratia payment of 5 lakhs, his wife was so worried as to however will she get her two daughters educated and married. And just last week I met Vivek. Vivek lost his right arm in the Bombay accident, and while we have committed to Vivek employment for life, he knows he can't get the kind of jobs he could have got if he had his right arm. And Ramesh and Vivek are not alone. Last year, we had 8 Rameshes. That is 33% more Rameshes than the year before. And we had 14% less Viveks, but that's still 12 Viveks. And those numbers of non-fatalities, minor 43 and near misses of 170 that are shooting through the sky are nothing but Rameshes and Viveks waiting to happen. And we can't let this go on. Every quarter we have tried to do something, nothing has worked. So I've looked across the world and found this boutique agency in Paris, two people who worked with some of the most brilliant sort of projects and with some of the most sort of complex industries in the world, including some of our competitors. And they are pretty certain that if they can work with us for a year, they can bring us to world standards. My request to you in the audience is, can you approve a project that will take a year and cost $500,000? Now, I'm going to ask you, Anshuman, between the two, is there a chance that you will have a different response?
Oh, absolutely. I think I was, and to the audience, I can say that I'm seeing this for the first time. So while IC and I have prepared for the show, many parts of the show we did not discuss because we wanted it to be as authentic for you as possible. So I am learning along with you in the audience. So to answer the question, I see. Um, I mean, having been in consulting situations like the first one, I might still have said yes, assuming that I had the money, right? But in the second case, I would have gone out on a limb to get the money for the situation, because no budget has 500,000 lying around, right? Whatever be the size of the company, nobody has a 500,000 extra lying around. So everybody has to arrange for it. I would go out and arrange it for the second situation. In the first situation, my response will be, I'm with you, I understand this, but this money is not lying around. We have to invest in training, we have to invest in new product development and all. And sad but true, this is part of industrial life, that if you run a large company, these accidents do happen. I've heard these words, similar words, in incidentally in fertilizer and cement, right? So as a consultant, um, so I can totally get this. I hope the people in the audience got the message
And
without.
so the question is, what is the difference? The only difference is context, right? In the first one, they were just numbers on an Excel sheet, right? In
Correct.
the second one, we gave a context to the number. And to give a context, I didn't need to tell you 8 Ramesh stories and 14 Vivek stories. I could tell you one story and I got you into the context. Now, the fact is, as a decision maker, you have had 3 meetings in the morning. There are 20 things on your mind. I walk in, put an Excel sheet in front of you and say, take, decide. Yeah. And then we label these people, or a बहुत सवाल पूछता है, they ask too many questions. They are just data people. They're not, they're just grappling at straws. So how do you take this forward? So you may not be presenting a safety officer death situation, but here it is. When you go and present, let's say you've just got a customer survey, yeah, and you find that you've got 78% satisfaction, but you want to do something more. So instead of going and telling your team or whatever, we've got 78% satisfaction, we need to go to 84. Can you tell a story about one or two people from the 22 that were not satisfied and how their life has changed? Or the 78 who are satisfied and how their life has changed, and you want to get this life into that? If you can give me those stories, because for you those numbers are no numbers, they're human beings behind them, but for the listener it's just a number. So can you think, because most of our numbers, and I'm not saying all, but most of our numbers are nothing but summary of events, summary of
Mm.
profit events, summary of customer service events, summary of failure events. Can you get one or two of those examples and use that to bring it alive? So going back to your question, yes, data and facts are important. That's the currency of business. What storytelling can do is put context to data and hence inspire action. Like you said, I'll go out on a limb to get the money. So I can inspire action by using the stories.
No, very well. There are quite a few. I think this story has already connected this thing. So Rajya Lakshmi, of course, says that meanwhile create awareness and safety measures. Of course, she has some suggestions. Rajiv feels that we were able to connect. Thank you, Rajiv. Yeah, quite a few comments coming in. Thank you. Some feel there is too much gyan as well. So we will try and IC and I will try and correct your perception through the show. Sumant, who's head of innovation at Titan, he of course brings the emotional part in the story. So we will get more into deeper into this. So moving on, I think the the natural question would be, I see that, and I think we've discussed briefly this earlier, that uh, storytelling can be learned. It's an acquired skill, right? Of course there will be people who are naturally better at it than others, like every other skill. Some are natural, every skill that you look at, some are naturals, but they also have to, it's like having talent in sports, right? You can have talent, it will take you this far but no further. So my question therefore is, from on behalf of all the people in the call, assuming that we have some basic of storytelling. So the question has two parts. Are there different types of stories in many ways? And particularly in corporate setting, right? Because that's our context. And the other is that, how can I get started? What would be a structure? Is there a structure, or it is unique to me and unique to you and therefore can't be copied or understood? So slightly longer question, but I'll simplify. Are there types of stories in corporate context? And B, is there a structure that I can learn and follow as I learn this skill?
Okay. So yeah, I won't say, there are different types of stories for different situations. So one is anecdotes and, tiny little stories to make something abstract concrete. Like the example I gave you for Mahindra Holidays. The abstract was no room for ordinary. That story was what made it concrete. Of course, in business there is a lot of work we do in either using or crafting stories or using story structures to do multiple things. How do I connect with the audience, with my people, or if I'm in sales, with my clients? How do I build credibility of me and my team? How do I explain change? How do I show that I'm capable of delivering that change? How do I address belief based objections that we have, etc.? So a lot of those. So the first answer is yes, there are multiple types that one can use. But before getting lost in all this, how your question was, how can I start today? Yeah, let's say, how can I start today? So what you can do is that, the fact is, even today, with many people not working, or if you are really not doing anything, then think of Monday. How long will it take, Anshuman, for you on Monday before you have given your first opinion after you have started your work, whether through Zoom or physical, how long will it take from the start of business day for you to give your first opinion or advice?
In my case specifically, it will be around 10:30, 11, where we have a weekly
Correct.
review.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So as soon as we get to interact, we will give opinions, and there's nothing wrong with
certainly.
it because that's what we are paid for. We are paid for our opinions. But where have those opinions come from? The opinions are not pulled out of thin air, right? They have come from experiences, either
Yeah.
your own experience or experience of someone else that you've either heard, read, or seen. Right now, if I translate that into my language, that all opinions that I have, all advice that we give, come from stories that we've been part of or stories that we've heard, read, or seen. So let me take an example and do share any strong opinion that you have, that you, let's say, an opinion that you'd love to share with the audience today, that you have
Oh,
about work. Yeah.
wasn't ready for a viva, but but I'll take a shot. So over the last few years, one strong opinion among many is that when I do coach and advise team members or others in similar profession, I do say that, look, don't ignore your perception or what you do with your senior management. So the senior management connect that we should have is often ignored, and I ask people to invest in that connection. Um,
So
this
what I'm
is
hearing is that people tend
probably
to focus on their team and building credibility
colleagues.
among
Yeah,
peers,
yeah,
and you'd also want them not to forget that there is a set of people
correct.
who are also important. Now, where did this opinion come from?
It's a it's been set over last maybe 7, 8 years, maybe around. Okay, so I'll be a little more candid then. This is public, but let me try. Um, this is one of the lowest points in my career where I actually went through a situation where I thought I was doing really well. My team thought I was doing fantastically well. I had good peer level perception in the organization. Won't name it, but yeah. So but at some point, and this didn't happen overnight, I started feeling that my connection with senior to me wasn't the best, or at least not what I thought, and I started getting inputs, and it came to a breakdown situation, which is in many ways the lowest point in my career. um, so that's where the opinion started that I messed up. Yeah, I would say that part.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the audience now, and you guys can answer with yes and no, and Anshuman will be able to see your response. If he had just said that my advice to everyone in this audience is that don't forget about the fact that there are many stakeholders. Don't just focus on your team and colleagues, but also make sure your relationship with supervisors is intact. If he has given that advice and we had moved on to the next question, um, how much would you remember that tomorrow, versus now that he has given you an example of why he believes that, is there a chance that you'll remember this now for far longer, yes or no, because he has added an example? What are the responses coming? I can't
Mm,
see the.
I'm trying to keep a look. There's usually a little bit of a lag in at LinkedIn
Okay, okay,
from
okay.
coming in. So they will
Doesn't
come
matter.
in. Yeah,
Yeah, but
they'll
going
come.
by, I've asked this question to multiple people. It's usually a yes. And
So
why is
we've
it a
started
yes?
getting yes.
Because
Yeah. So
yeah,
Murugesh,
and
Rajiv, Selva, quite a few yeses have come in. Yeah.
the reason it is yes is we can't remember data points and opinions, but we can remember stories, and that has got to do with how our brain is structured. From the time we have become human beings, the most sort of heavy lifting part of our brain is the cortex. Now, cortex does most of our work, but unfortunately the cortex can't understand language. Yeah, it was not built to understand language or words, etc. But it is the one that is great with memory. Now, What does it process? It processes visuals and emotions. And it's only when much later, when language and all that started coming in, that the human being actually developed a new layer of brain. It's called the neocortex. Neo as a new, the
Yeah.
new cortex. It's the new cortex that can understand words, language, etc., but it is not very good with memory. So when you said that, don't take care of only your team members and your relationship with them, but relationship with others, the neocortex processed it, and everyone said, yeah, I know. And if I ask them to respond to it just now, they'll tell you what they heard. But the neocortex is it's like the RAM and the ROM. Once you switch it off and move to another subject, that memory gets lost. But the reason they will remember the story, and so just to take, let's say, the Club Mahindra story, why do people remember it even after they have heard it from me 2 years ago or read it in the book? Is because just now when I told that story, every one of you imagined a reception. You had to. You imagined a car stuck in traffic. You imagined or visualized a motorcycle. And that b- was getting processed by what? Your cortex, which is damn good with memory, right? So it's the neocortex which gets the word, but the only time that the word can get translated into visuals and emotions is when it's a story. And so when you take your opinion or advice and you add the story that created that opinion and advice, you'll get to have that advice stick much longer. So to come to your second question, how can we start tomorrow on business storytelling? Is whenever you're going to share a very strong opinion that you have, ask yourself, what incident in my life created this opinion, or what incident reinforced this opinion, and share that incident along with your opinion. And with that, you would have started your journey as a business storyteller.
No, sound advice, and I think in the audience, people would have realized that um, this is this was a live demonstration of how a story can be created out of an opinion. So, I shared an opinion, and of course, I had some deep-rooted reason for having that opinion. It was not out of thin air, and but IC's probing allowed me to go deeper and pull out that incident and share. Right now, it is obviously already clear that with the responses in the chat now, I see they have all come in. That even if we keep the science of the cortex and the neocortex aside, this resonates because people, like in your case, the resort story, people were able to imagine a car and a reception and a person going on a bike and stuff. In my case, since it was a corporate office story, people would have been able to imagine maybe their own situation, that we also have peers, we have team members, we have seniors, and sometimes those relationships don't work out the way we want. So yeah, awesome. uh, we are at the halfway mark to the show, and some questions have already, of course, come in, a little above halfway actually. But this is the time for your questions to come in. So please drop in your questions. Some have already been there earlier. So if I miss your questions, please drop them again, and I will. If they are easy ones, I will take them. If they are tough ones, IC will take them. the Okay. One question before we get to the other list is, I think, prompted by this last few minutes from Rajeshwar Rao. In a typical high impact story, how much importance is given to the characters in the story who made the difference to the story? How much importance is given to the characters? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that, see, without characters, it's very difficult for my brain to imagine. So if I said to you that a large multinational in Eastern Europe had a problem, yeah, no pictures, no emotion, etc. But no multinational in Europe had a problem. Some human being in that multinational had a problem. So if you told me, the chief marketing officer, Peter, in a large multinational in Europe had this problem, you are starting to visualize and empathize. Yeah. And stories make a difference because you can visualize and empathize. So having a central character is important. What is not important is to bring every character in it. So let's say in Anshuman's case, in that incident, maybe he was called to a meeting and there were six people who were from his senior thing who gave him advice. And there was the CMO, the CTO, the da 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 da. Now he could tell us the story by saying, one day my CEO called me and he gave me this advice. It is okay to leave out the rest, because as long as I've got one human being in character, I've brought that story alive. I brought the visuals alive. I brought the emotions alive. So having a character which is part of that story, not inventing a character, but having a character which is part of the story is vital, because that's what makes the story something I care about and something I can visualize.
So there you go, Raj. You had your answer. I'll take one more question quickly. Sriram, who's a consultant based out of Bombay, when do we not use stories to drive our message across? So if I get his question, of course,
When
one
not to
is
use stories.
yeah, when not to
Okay.
use stories, and the other way I can interpret is that we always need stories, right? So, but
No.
over to
So
you.
now there are a few times, very few times, that I wouldn't use a story. The first is, there are times when I should be listening. Yeah. Whether stories or not story, I shouldn't be talking, and that's, I think, something which is direly needed as a skill for everyone in corporate, which is the art of listening. The second is when the question I have been asked is a close-ended or a data-based question. So if my boss says, "What is the projection for sales for this week?" That's not the time to say, 4 years ago, boss. Yeah, yeah, that's when you'll be told kahani mat batao. So
Yeah.
when it is a close-ended question or a yes no, can you finish this project by afternoon? Yes or no. You can then use a story to explain your answer, but that answer is yes or no, right? So the second thing is when I'm asked a close-ended or a database question, and the third is when the person across the conversation is agitated. Yeah, they are not listening to my 30-second, 60-second stories. They are not listening. So don't waste stories on them. So those are the three situations. Otherwise, I think almost every situation I can think of, a story or a story structure to use.
Those in the audience, if you didn't realize, IC dropped a gem in the last few seconds. If you were listening, you would have noted. He said 30 seconds, 60 seconds, right? So stories are the best when delivered in a minute or less. Of course, some stories need time and space, and
But nothing
the
more
key,
than 180 seconds.
yeah. So there you go.
Never.
So yeah, so 1 to 2 minutes, is
It's
ideal.
idle.
And that too, I've heard some of your stories, the recorded ones. I see that you share often. You are able to hook the audience, right? So that's important, and I've seen others as well, I'm sure. And that hook is extremely important, like you said, and it should be not
Mhm.
too many characters, but the story should come out. Okay, so we have a lot of questions, but I will ask one from my prepared list, so that we can quickly get into it. This is more for a little bit slightly mid senior people, I see. So as we
Mhm.
get more senior, our stories change. The stories we tell ourselves change, and the stories we tell others also changes, obviously because of context and experiences, right? Any tips for mid and senior management people to tell better stories, particularly senior, slightly senior? Quite a few in the audience, so hence I thought I'll customize one question for us.
So I think in terms of storytelling and usefulness of storytelling is there for anyone who has to communicate. Yeah. The only thing is that as we go higher, so when we are at the lower down, we are the what you call individual contributors. So most of the work I do myself, and the only time I'm communicating is when I'm reporting or I'm trying to work with one more individual or someone else. As I go higher and higher, if you take, let's say, at the CEO level, the CEO actually does nothing himself or herself, right? Almost he or she gets things done, which means communication becomes more and more important. So the first thing is that, yes, as you go up, your the impact of using stories goes up. To me, the kind of stories don't go up. Your repertoire of stories goes up simply because your experience has gone up. So, for example, Anshuman, even if you had a problem, some problem of a similar kind when you are in the first year, versus if you have accumulated knowledge of a problem, your ability to choose the right example that demonstrate the same problem will dramatically go up because of experience. So, to me, the difference is how much of a sort of reservoir of stories do you have? Because as you go mid, senior, etc., your reservoir of story increases because of two reasons. One is mainly 80% of the reason is because of your experience, and 20% because you've read more, right? So your own experience and experience of others. But in terms of usage of the stories, I think you know anyone can do it. Impact is higher simply because you are impacting more people with the story as you go up.
The audience also increases in many ways, right?
That's
So
what.
yeah.
That's it. Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
um will Subramaniam Anant is a partner with EY. He has a question. Thought there was a second question to ICO. So he's reminding us that I had asked a
No, there
question.
was no. How do we get started? Which is what the example I gave.
Correct.
Subramaniam or Subbu, I'm sure you're called. The example I gave is that starting tomorrow, yeah, whenever you're going to be sharing an opinion, you ask yourself what experience from your life has either created that opinion or reinforced that opinion. And then when you share that opinion and that experience. And that's how you can get started. That was my answer to that question. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. And Silva Kumar is asking an interesting one. How much emotions and body language is so, or how important is emotions and body language in narrating a story?
I'm going to add a third one, voice modulation. Right? None of that are important except for what is already there in the way you speak. So forget story, Selva. I'm sure when you are passionate about something, even in your presentation, I can hear the passion. If you're angry about something, I can hear the anger. You don't have to perform your passion or perform your anger. You don't have to perform stories. Yeah, and I know I'm going to sound a bit agitated here because it took a long time. Say, like Anshuman said, from the time we started, when no one was talking about stories in this country, and we started, a ton of people who are from the theater have come into business storytelling. Yeah, and they have actually queered the pitch because they tell people you've got to act out your story, you've got to change your voice. And people think, oh my god, I can't do that, and surely not everyone is an actor. And two is, that is not what, in fact, storytelling in business needs to be invisible. I'll repeat that. Storytelling in business needs to be invisible. What do I mean by that? I don't mean that no one will ever find out, but not when I'm delivering the story. People shouldn't be saying, ye to story hai, because then we'll go back to kahani mat batao. So how do you get out of it? You tell your story. Like, I'm sure you saw me do this since the time we started. My voice didn't change between answering Anshuman's question or telling the story, right? And if there was a story emotion inbuilt, it came through the inbuilt. The emotion of, wow, this guy went out of his way to deliver that food parcel. I didn't have to emote that, or 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 act that out. Now, as far as other body language is concerned, of course, body language is more, as a lot of people say, is more of the message than the words itself. But that's nothing to do with stories. Any body language for any conversation is important. I hope that answers your question, Selva.
Yeah, Silva's question, and if I may add, I see with your permission, also sometimes many of us, and I've had this question from people because most of the stories I tell are through written word, right? So I post quite a bit on LinkedIn, and those in the audience who want to check some of these stories, I try and post short stories from work-related experiences, learning from IC, but I I write it down, right? So there is no body language in it, there is no accent in it, there is no voice modulation in it, but it can connect, right? Because you are reading it, and if you find that connect, you will establish that connect. And a little story around this also is some years ago, maybe about a decade ago, actually now, I was in Hong Kong, I see, for a business catalyst training program, and I've never forgotten
Mhm.
this. One day of that 3 day training was with an actor, right? And
Mhm.
in the cohorts, they had got actually, actors from really Hollywood and other stuff. So the one we got, our cohort got, was Nicolas Chagrin. He's been in quite a few movies, a French actor. He had an accent that we had difficulty understanding. Half the group was Chinese or Cantonese speaking, Mandarin speaking, locals. Some were from India, three people, two hard, deep rooted South Indian accent is one my North Indian English accent, and I think there was one other European in the group. And we actually did discuss after a while that none of us had any difficulty, and it was about storytelling. Everybody was using their own accent, their own mannerisms. We had zero problem. So this whole thing around accent is also overhyped quite a bit, using body language unnecessarily. Whatever is natural to you, authentic to you, if that comes out, I think that's the
Absolutely.
best option, right? So with
Absolutely.
that, uh, so we covered the tips part. I don't want you to leave. I see, and I have some questions. We'll get into the from the audience, but there's one question certainly, and I believe there was a question from the audience as well. That if somebody wants to know more about this, right? So you do conduct workshops and all for people, and I will try and find that question in the audience from the audience where I believe somebody asked about when is your next workshop. So anything on that? What do you cover in the
Okay.
workshop, and when is
So
it
first
next?
of all, the thing is that while we've run more than 150 workshops, very few, I think three of them have been public workshops. Yeah. So most of the workshops I run are for companies. So one, of course, is to get your company to run a workshop. And why do we do that? We're just a very small team. Getting 10 people, that's our minimum cohort size, to sign up for a workshop, getting is something is very difficult for us to manage in terms of our time. So there are three things that you can do in the reducing order of effort. Yeah. The highest effort is to go convince your company to run a program with us and you be part of that. The second is to get together 5 6 people and come to me as 5 6 people. We'll run it, we'll find if we can get 10, but we need a cohort of 5 6 people to start with. The easiest and the cheapest is to buy the book. Yeah. That you can get off Amazon. I think Amazon is discounting heavily, so it's about $240. uh, is it as good as the workshop? Of course it can't be, because there we interact and ask questions, but the book was designed for people who can't come to a workshop. So it is designed not as a book for gyan, as someone said, but it actually gives you step by step. It gives you exercises. Yeah. It'll at least get you started. But yes, if a few of you get together, we can do a public workshop. We don't normally announce public workshops because you
Sure. So
rarely ever
Madhuri, I
run them.
think
Yeah.
I'm glad I was able to find your question. It's an important question because some have already messaged me on WhatsApp saying that we would like to know more about these workshops. So there you go. That's the answer.
So drop me a message on LinkedIn if there are enough people together. We'll look at it running a workshop.
Yeah, and that reminds me also that if some of you just want to learn a little bit about this and don't want a full-fledged workshop, follow IC. He's very active on LinkedIn and often posts stories, and there is a huge story bank that he has. So if you check his past posts also, you could learn just from watching him narrate a story, right? So you can save some money and thank me later, but you could do that. Ankush,
Even I've just posted a short link on your chat. You could post it publicly. That is the link to the YouTube channel, which has those 54 stories already in the story bank, and it's got about 40 stories from leaders. So that's about 100 stories for people to start with.
sure. I will, if it hasn't gone on to LinkedIn, sometimes LinkedIn has a little bit of a problem taking in the chat from this. I will repost it once I'm
Yeah.
back on live. But
Okay.
let's take Ankush's question. Ankush is with the EY as well. How do you build your story bank for different situations? So yeah, so do you build a story bank, and should
Yes, you
you?
do.
And if yes,
Yes, of
then
course.
how?
Yeah. So first of all, there's no one who can remember all the stories that they'll read. Yeah. I think stories are like raindrops. Yeah. You can see them when they fall, but unless you collect them, they're going to be all gone. So yes, you need to build a story bank. How do you build your story bank for different situations? Three things. One is, now that you know that one of the great ways of making your conversation more impactful and memorable is that you think of about your life, like we did with Anshuman a little while ago. Think about the opinions you have about your life, the points that you regularly try to make with clients and teams, and look for what experience in your life has driven that. And those experiences become part of the story bank. The second is, as you read more and more, you find that all business books, it doesn't have to be autobiography, are full of story. Now some are more than the others. Malcolm Gladwell's books have more stories than others. That's one place. The third is, there's 100 stories to start with, and all of them are on different business points. These stories are not for the sake of entertainment. They are put there in the story bank because they drive home different business points. So those would be the three buckets you can look for. Your own stories, which to me is my favorite bucket. It's authenticated. I know it's true. The second is stories that I read in books, etc. And third is, at this point, there is the StoryWorks story bank that you can dip into.
No, thanks. I see. So Subbu has asked, and another Deepthi also asked a similar question. How do you remember so many stories to be able to connect appropriately?
Okay. So the
And
remembering stories, you do require, to find a way to save your stories and get them when you need them. I don't have time to get through that today, but we use Evernote. So if you guys have the copy of the book, there's a full chapter as to how you store and search stories. But essentially, put your stories in Evernote. Uh, Put the points the stories make as tags, and so that you can find them. I can't be more. It'll take me a
yeah,
long time to explain the whole steps, but essentially, find a way where you can store your stories and tag it with the business points that you need.
sure, sure. So the simpler version of Evernote I use is Google Keep.
Mm,
So during my walk, or if I'm reading something, or during a meeting, sometimes if I think of something, I
mm,
just quickly jot it down on Google Keep and put some kind of a tag along with it. So of course, Evernote is far more stronger, and the search capabilities are much better.
mm.
Uh, there is a icy hack that Dhruti has shared, and you must read his book. Thank you, Dhruti. And not once, but at various stages in your career, cause the way he tells stories. Okay, fantastic. The hack that I wanted to share is get IC to do his book reading at your office. You get his time, his learning, and in brief, and also you get to buy his book. So this is a hack Dhruti has shared. Uh, Quite a few questions still coming in.
Before we
Authenticity
go
is
to the
some.
next question, Anjuman, I know that we won't be able to answer all the questions today. Yeah. But if there's something that's burning in you, that there is a question that you needed to be answered, put it on my LinkedIn, and I'll make sure we answer. Yeah. Okay.
No, and I know that you have a hard stop today. I see, and it's something that I would want you to attend definitely. But I'm just quickly looking through the questions. Many were around. Many are still around. The same topic of how to narrate the stories, which I think you have answered in elaborate. There are some around how to get more. So thank you for your offer to answer these questions. And like I said, we can always reach out to you on LinkedIn. Some have asked about the duration, which also we answered. You know, a minute is ideal, but no more than 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah, that too, if we can engage. Lakshmi has a question. What should be the approach one if one has been given a limited time to present one's input data and you have been explicitly asked to stick to facts? How do we win a story, or should one avoid? So partly you answered this question, but this is a specific
But
one,
I'll,
so you
I'll
want to
give.
take.
I think the people
Yeah.
this is coming back, so it's worth reiterating. Now, when people have said stick to facts, what they really have meant is, can you be sharp and focused? Yeah. When people say kahani mat batao, they want to know the information. But let's go back to my original sort of definition of story. Stories are facts. What I'm asking you to do is wrap that fact in context and deliver the fact with emotion. So think about this. I don't know if you were there from the beginning, but think about the safety officer's example. Yeah, it was all woven around data and facts. And one thing you'll find is, and this has come through to many people who've gone through my programs, is that if the supposed time is 5 minutes for your presentation, if you're making sense with an example, e.g., a story, people are willing to listen for more than 5 minutes, because what do people want? They want to know what you're talking about. right? They want that information to come, they want to understand. And if the story is helping them understand, they're not going to say, don't tell me a story. The problem is when they say, don't tell me a story, they don't mean a story, they mean that you're going all over the place. Yeah. So use stories, but one thing is you practice your stories and tighten your stories before you go and tell them. And that way you will be, even when pressed for time, be able to tell stories. Just think
Cool.
about today, how much we've been here for, what, 50, 55 minutes. We've told
Yeah.
a lot of stories, including a lot of data. So it's not that you can't tell stories in short time.
No, certainly. I think the other way also is that, and I do want to share with the audience that nobody's born with this, right? Yes, some have more talent than others, but you have to practice this. So if you are believing that, you can listen to this session and, from Monday you will be awesome on storytelling, in spite of IC's, support that you have today, you will not be awesome on Monday. You will be awkward, you will take time, but if you consistently practice, if you keep at it, you will get better. Of course, practice is not, perfect practice is also important. You have to keep in mind what you are practicing about. And like I mentioned, if you wanted more information, there are other workshops that he does as well. Interesting one, Sandeep has asked, I don't know if this makes sense to you. Do you do virtual
Yeah.
workshops? I'm sure in last
So
2 years
last
everybody
3 years, everything was virtual. So, and it continues to be virtual
Yeah,
for
so
most
yeah,
of the
Sandeep, there
cases.
you go. Quite a few thank yous coming in, and and we are nearing the hard stop that we had agreed. I see, so I let you go, but not without thanking you on behalf of the audience and everybody in the audience. Quite a few people are asking about the YouTube link. So if you want the YouTube link of this chat show, I will definitely leave it. It was there in the invite, but I will leave it again. And the Bitly link that Indranil I see shared, I will repost it on the LinkedIn thing. Don't worry. There is a little bit of a problem from StreamYard to go live on uh, LinkedIn. Okay, so a lot of thank yous coming in from Sharat, Sandeep, Anand, Lakshmi, quite a few. So thank you on their behalf and from me as
Thank you
well.
so much.
We've been wanting to connect for a long time, and glad that it happened on a for a good cause where I had the privilege of learning from the master and with an audience, right? So the audience also learned in the process. We will try and do a similar one after some time, some weeks, for maybe a more select audience. But with that, thank you very much. Those in the audience, we you can expect a show next Saturday as well, same time, in the quality series that I do of quality professionals. So with that, I'll close the show. Thank you, IC.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
everyone
having
for
me.
joining.
Thank you.
My
Thank you.
pleasure. Bye bye.
Bye.